My name is George Smith, and I work at a small company. It was at my brother's memorial service that I reunited with Susan, who is now my wife. Returning to my rural hometown for the first time in a while, I took the long-distance bus. It's been a while. Have you lost some weight? Are you eating properly? Susan asked. You haven't changed a bit. What do you mean? Are you trying to say I'm beautiful as always? No, I mean you're still as straightforward as ever, I replied. Your brother has been cheeky since the first time I met him, Susan said with a smile, looking at my brother's portrait on the wall. She was his wife, making her my sister-in-law. The first time I met Susan, I was a college student home for summer break. My brother had already started working and brought her home as his fiancée. Nice to meet you. I'm Susan. I've been wanting to meet you since I've heard a lot about you from your brother, she said. Oh, well, nice to meet you too. You're George, right? I responded, noticing her straight blonde hair that reached her chin and beautiful, determined eyes. My first impression was that she was a beautiful woman. Just her presence brightened our dark living room. Though my brother was usually quiet and reserved, he was eloquent in his praise of her. Susan had grown up with a single parent, like us. She and her father supported each other, but he passed away when she was in college, leaving her alone. Well, I've always had you and Mom, she said, living alone but earning my respect. Susan handed me a sweating bottle of beer and said, Your brother just exaggerates, smiling happily. Thinking back, I realized I was already drawn to her. Even so, my older brother was a significant figure who had supported Mom and me after our father passed away, always prioritizing family over himself. I wanted to bless his marriage and congratulated him, hiding my jealousy. However, my brother was diagnosed with cancer and died despite his battle with the disease. When I heard the news, I was shocked but more worried about Susan. On my way home, I kept thinking, how should I console her? Hi, Mom, I said as she greeted me with red eyes, looking terribly depressed in her mourning clothes. Susan spoke for my mom, who was too choked up to speak. Hi, George. Thank you for coming. She smiled serenely, just like when we first met. Although I was at a loss during the entire funeral, Susan maintained the dignified demeanor appropriate for the chief mourner. At that moment, I realized how childish I still was. From then on, my goal was to become an adult like my brother. After graduating from college and starting to work, I worked tirelessly to avoid relying on my family. I was recognized and promoted at my company and eventually got married. Before I knew it, years had passed since I last returned home. My days were filled with work and supporting my partner. Then a postcard arrived. George, please come home this Sunday. It's just a small memorial service with family. But your brother and Mom have been wanting to see you, Susan said, her voice filled with warmth. Even after my brother passed, Susan stayed with my mom, living together. Back then, Susan told me, leave your mom to me, and sent me off. Tracing the handwriting she wrote at the kitchen table filled me with nostalgia. I decided to go back home for the first time in years. Susan hadn't changed at all. She welcomed me home without a single complaint about not hearing from me or seeing me for so long. It was just the three of us for dinner, Mom, Susan, and me. As we ate the slightly extravagant meal they had prepared, we reminisced about my brother. Mom and Susan seemed close and happily shared stories about the time I wasn't around. After a while, Mom seemed to tire herself out and went to bed early. When it was just Susan and me, I felt a bit nervous. Cheerful as always, she said, it's really lively when the family gets together. Your mom was brighter than usual. Thanks, George. You too, Susan. Thanks for taking care of my mom all this time. Don't be silly. Your mom is like my real mom too. It's no trouble at all. She waved her hand dismissively and lifted a beer bottle. Come on, let's drink. Tell me what you've been up to. I told Susan everything. How I graduated from college and got into a good company, how frustrating it was when I couldn't do my job well at first, about the first big project I was assigned, how I trained my subordinates and how they finally became competent, and about my married life. Sorry I couldn't make it to your wedding. Don't worry about it. My wife wanted a small ceremony with just friends anyway. You did send a gift. I hope so, but I was worried you couldn't bring your wife because I'm still living here. That's not true. I came alone because we recently separated. I was quite drunk and said more than I should have. Really? Work kept me busy and we started drifting apart. Is your job that demanding? Yeah, I'm in charge of a big project. I leave at dawn and come back at midnight. Are you eating properly? Not really. I only come home to sleep. That's no good. I know. Anyway, tonight's dinner was great. I hadn't had mom's cooking in ages. I love her sautéed vegetables. Actually, I made that. Your mom taught me. Oh, so it was you. Susan, it was delicious. Do you mean it? Yeah, I could even eat it every day. Then how about I come over and take care of the house for you? As we were both tipsy and I thought Susan was just joking, I agreed lightly. I'll be happy if you do. Then I returned to my apartment with a hangover. 2 days later, Susan actually showed up. I finished work early for once, thinking I'd finally tackle the pile of laundry, and came home to find her in an apron. Hi, George. What are you? How did you? I told the landlord I'm family and he let me in. Nice place. The landlord seems nice too. What about Mom? She gladly sent me. She even asked me to take care of you for a while now. Got it. Dinner's ready. Hey, you know what? You can complain while eating. Come on. Even at the entrance, I could smell the delicious food, which made my stomach growl. After getting a lecture from Mom on the phone, I reluctantly let Susan handle the housework. Despite my initial reluctance, her meals were amazing. Besides, having someone greet me at home was wonderful. Her tomato stew, spinach salad, and cheese pasta were superb, making me look forward to dinner after a hard day at work. With peace of mind, work went smoothly, and I even found myself with some free time. When I started coming home early, having a drink with Susan in the evenings became our routine. We spent those quiet times chatting about nothing or watching TV while enjoying the snacks she prepared. You and your brother are alike in that you both can't handle alcohol, she would tease. Susan could drink anyone under the table and still stay sober, while I'd give up and end up walking her to the apartment she rented nearby. Listen to what happened at work today. I'd start, and she would listen to my slightly drunken complaints without a hint of annoyance. Her encouraging words, "You are doing great," or "You can do it, don't worry," gave me the strength to keep going the following day. Having completely opened up to Susan, I confessed one evening, actually, the real reason I separated from my wife wasn't just because of work. Really? She asked. Yeah, I was too busy to keep promises, and when I made her mad, I couldn't apologize sincerely. I'd just say, "I'm busy, just deal with it." That means you both were immature, you and your wife. I felt a bit annoyed. Immature? Yeah, you couldn't empathize with each other because you were both too caught up in yourselves. She was right. Seeing my silence, she added with a gentle look, "But you're different now, right? You're kind enough to walk me home even when you're tipsy. You're a thoughtful and caring person." My husband was quiet too, but he was kind. He'd say, "You're strong, but you don't have to pretend when I'm around. Lean on me when you need to." From the moment I met Susan, I thought she was an adult who handled everything effortlessly, but she had her own vulnerabilities and had been living on edge without any family to rely on. Seeing that new side of her, I felt a strong desire to protect her for my brother's sake too. The following day, I worked hard to finish on time. Seeing my determination, my younger colleague seemed surprised and offered to help. "George, what's gotten into you?" "Oh, nothing. I'm curious now. I might not be very reliable, but please tell me what I can do for you." When I was a newbie and clueless, I made a huge mistake and you apologized on my behalf. Since then, I've wanted to be useful to you. I was deeply moved when my younger colleague, whom I had been looking after since he was new, said that to me. "Actually, I'm going to confess my feelings today." Confess to who? To my late brother's wife, my sister-in-law. I explained about reuniting with Susan. "That's complicated, but you're a mature and great guy. I'm sure it'll work out." I realized I was unknowingly comparing my ex-wife to Susan, trying to act grown-up and getting stubborn. "You called me mature, but I think Susan sees me as a kid." "What are you talking about? Men are always treated like kids by women. I have a sister, so I know. Sometimes I think she still sees me as a grade schooler." "You were kidding. Susan wouldn't think I'd be that young." "Don't worry, I'm sure she loves you." "Hey, stop talking nonsense." "Don't worry, I'll handle the assignment due tomorrow, so go home early." Although I thought he was cheeky, I couldn't wait any longer and left work in a hurry. "All right, I'm counting on you." I ran home as fast as I could, eager to see Susan and tell her how I felt. "Wow, you're back early." Out of breath from running, I couldn't utter a word. Though puzzled by my breathlessness, Susan smiled warmly. "Since you're home, let's have dinner and some drinks," she said, taking my bag. "Listen to me. I tried again, but Susan was busy preparing dinner. What did you say? Let's have this good wine I found. Susan, could you please listen to me? When I called her name, she looked startled. What's the matter? Speaking so formally. Well, tell me while we drink. Seeing my serious expression, she looked vulnerable. Sorry for scaring you. I calmed myself and stood right in front of her, carefully not to frighten her. Before we start drinking, I want to say this. Susan, thank you for everything. I've been able to work hard because you're here. Coming home to you makes me truly happy. Yesterday, you said I'm still a kid, and you're right. Compared to my brother, I'm still far behind. But I love you, Susan. Are you serious? I want to protect you for my brother's sake too. When I confessed, Susan started to cry. Seeing her in tears made me flustered because she was usually so strong-willed. Oh, sorry, did I upset you? No, I love you too, George. Nothing drastically changed, but Susan and I became a couple. If anything changed, it was that we started going out together on weekends. We went to movies and shopping. I learned that Susan didn't like taking the bus alone. One time in college, I overslept and ended up at an unfamiliar bus stop. I panicked and got on the wrong bus in the opposite direction. It was late and I was really scared, thinking I couldn't get home. I had no one to call to pick me up, and I cried at the dark bus stop. It's okay now. If you get lost somewhere, I'll pick you up. Thanks, George. Susan looked so relieved, almost childlike. Our relationship was going well, but during the critical phase of my project, I made a mistake. I had promised to have dinner with Susan, but a meeting ran late and I couldn't contact her for 2 hours. When I checked my phone, there were missed calls from her. Susan, I'm swamped at work and can't make it tonight. Isn't there something you want to say to me? I was worried because I couldn't reach you. I told you I was busy. I'm hanging up now. Sensing she was about to lecture me, I abruptly ended the call. Looking at my phone, I saw messages from her. What's wrong? Are you okay? Are you sick? Please call me. Her messages were filled with concern, which struck me. She had expressed worry on the call too. I was shocked at my own mistake. What should I do? The more I thought about apologizing, the less I knew how to do that. I missed the timing completely. I feared our relationship might end up like my previous marriage. Just thinking about that made me freeze up, leading me to avoid contact with her for several days. Then one day, I came home to find Susan waiting for me. Standing by the door, she greeted me as usual. Hi, George. Seeing me avoid eye contact, she suggested, how about going out for a drink? Maybe you can apologize then. However, I was filled with shame and replied stubbornly, you don't need to take care of me like this, acting as if we were back to just a pre-relationship dynamic. This time only, she said cheerfully, you know I'm strong-willed. I wouldn't do this for anyone else. You're special. Okay, I'm giving you a special pass. Her hands were tightly clenched and trembling. I was taken aback. How much had Susan worried about my silence? Just knowing someone will pick me up makes me feel secure. Why hadn't I noticed her vulnerability hidden in those words? Even though I said I wanted to protect her for my brother's sake too, I hadn't been doing that at all. I'm sorry, Susan. Please forgive me. Of course, I forgive you. Thank you for apologizing. Hearing my words, she laughed and cried at the same time. As if a dam had burst in my heart, I apologized to my brother. I'm sorry. I'll become more mature and protect Susan from now on. In my imagination, my brother had a resigned look on his face. The day I decided to propose to Susan, I called my mom. My mom was overjoyed and told me that she had dreamed of my brother, who said in her dream, George might be unreliable at times, but I'm sure he'll change. He will surely take care of you and Susan for me. As always, he saw right through me. I can't compete with him. I felt like I was being patted on the head by his large hand after a long time, which made me cry. Please watch over me from heaven. I addressed my brother in heaven. From now on, I'll walk through life with Susan. I might not be able to become like you, but I'll live my life responsibly, both at work and at home, in order to make Susan happy, the woman I love. So don't worry. After I hung up the phone, Susan asked, is your mom doing well? Yeah, she's doing great. By the way, Susan, there's something I want to ask you.